morning. I'm Timothy Elliott. My pronouns are they or he, and I have the honor to serve as co-chair of Rainbow Youth Alliance's Advisory Council. When I got here this morning, Reverend Rebecca came to me and said, "Come up, you're going to sit on stage with me." And I said, "No." Partly, and I didn't tell you at the time, partly is because I didn't know if I could hold my tears in, which I have not been able to. So please bear with me. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. Let's begin our time today with a moment of silence. We'll take a few breaths together. And as we breathe, let's center our mind and body on what brings us here today, to this place and this moment. Allow yourself to listen deeply to the quiet places inside you. This practice of mindfulness is how we on the Advisory Council begin every council meeting. It grounds us in what brings us to the work, again and again, returning to why we do what we do in RYA. It's a practice that, for me, I followed long before my connection with RYA in so much of my life and personal journey, which I'll share you a little bit about today. Thank you for joining that moment with me. I understand that this month the theme here is deep listening. I loved it when Reverend Rebecca sent that to me as a topic because it resonates so personally with my journey. And I find that often in our busy and chaotic world, it's hard to really hear both ourselves and others. But what I've found, it's in these moments of deep listening that we begin to peel back the layers of noisiness, revealing what's hidden within. I want to share a quote with you by Rumi. "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." This quote resonates with me on my journey in life and with RYA because it's been more about discovering and moving through those barriers than anything else. Story time. Like many of us, our barriers started, mine did, at a very early age. I was born into and raised in a very conservative Christian household where church was our life. Quite literally, we spent more time in the church building doing church activities than anything else, sometimes even more than school itself. I remember very distinctly the messages that the church put out, specifically around love the sinner, hate the sin. In my church, homophobia was quite actually encoded into the fundamental beliefs where it said, marriage is divinely established as only between a man and a woman. I saw my own LGBT family members treated quite differently from the church, and this only deepened my fear of not being accepted. All of this was going on as I was starting to come to understand my attractions, my desires, and it left me feeling completely lost. I found myself in an attempt to stay connected with my family that I loved and still do to this day. They have come a long way, and I'm very grateful for that. But also with a faith that I was steeped in, that was my core belief system. I was trapped, and what ended up happening is I got disconnected from me. As I grew older and began to reconcile parts of myself, an opportunity came my way. 2010. I first learned about RYA. You may have heard of it. This adult-facilitated peer-to-peer support group creating safe, affirming spaces for LGBT young people. So I had just graduated with my master's in social work. I was about a year into my social work career. I was bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to get out and help people. I was also what I term a baby gay, about a year into my coming out journey of accepting who I was, of sharing it more openly and honestly with others around me. And my clinical supervisor at the time, Shania Thomas, you saw him on the screen earlier, came to me and said, "Timothy, I run this group, it's a blast, and I'm exploring opportunities to step away, and we need to find a new leader. I think you would be perfect for the role." Well, it was an understatement to say how excited I was, because in so many ways, this was a dream job for me. An opportunity to support queer kids, giving them a space I wish I could have had growing up. A time to be creative and playful and fun and to throw parties. I mean, come on. And to get to wear cool shoes. There was just so much about it that resonated to my soul and heart. But at the same time, I knew I wasn't ready. After thinking about it and sitting with it, I finally came to the hard decision of saying no. And remember feeling so nervous coming to my supervisor and saying, "You know, Shania, I really appreciate the offer." Oh, I love it. Thank you for that. Close up on my shoes. I remember going to Shania and just so worried. What if she got offended that I said no? What if no one would ever ask me to do something like this again? And then ultimately, what about the kids? Who was going to be there to provide the space and support that they just so desperately needed? But I said no. And I felt, looking back, I felt a lot of pride in allowing myself to honor my own process, trusting that RYA would be there when I was ready. And luckily, my supervisor did too. She came to me and she said, "You know, I so honor what you're doing right now, and I want to remind you that this work of intentionality is not just about the work we do, but it's also about our personal journey and giving ourselves space to listen, to be with, and to allow it to unfold as it does." A little over a year later, she came back to me. She was like, "Are you ready?" And this time I was. I jumped in, heart wide open, both of my feet fully grounded in who I was and the healing work I had allowed myself to do. So a couple years goes by. I'm very situated, knowing the role, knowing the youth. We're having lots of fun, doing our meetings, doing different, we walked in the Pride Parade. First time for me walking in the Pride Parade, and I'll tell you, if you've never done it, go with young people. It's amazing to just see the excitement and joy of doing it. And there's one night that really stands out in my memory. It was our annual Valentine's Day dance. Now, you have to understand that RYA goes big when it comes to the Valentine's Day dance. We get a DJ, we decorate Founders Hall, we bring in lots of food, because you have to have food when working with young people, myself included. And we had a craft corner set up for a little quieter space for young people who want to create and maybe chat and not be in the hubbub of the dancing. I remember one young person coming in and going right into the craft corner. They were there the entire night, and it struck me as strange because this is the same young person who would initiate pillow fights, quite literally jumping off the walls, bouncing off the walls in our meetings, and I had just never experienced them in this way. Didn't think much of it, continued with the event, and was time to wrap up. So I'm there saying goodbye to people, thanking them for coming. This young person comes up to me, hands me a card, and scurries away. Slipped the card in my pocket. There was a lot of work to get done. I needed to clean up. It was late. I wanted to go home. I was exhausted. And it wasn't until later that night, where I was sitting on my couch, that my mind returned to the letter. Pulled it out, and this is what it said. Dear Timothy, thank you for accepting me. I want you to know that if I had not found RYA, I would not still be alive. You saved me. Every time I think of that story, I feel it. And I'm so grateful for that reminder of just what an impact we can all have simply by showing up, by being open, by being present, by being willing to listen. When I come back to that question of what brings me here, to this space, to this place and the work of RYA, I think about my child self. That baby that longed for a space I could show up, authentically me, no judgment, having fun, connecting. I think about baby gay Timothy, who knew he was not quite ready yet, but allowed the space and time to go through his own journey. And I think about that RYA young person who quietly slipped me that note, and so many of the RYA youth who haven't, but continue showing up. I come to this work for me. I come to this work for them. And I keep coming back because I need to. I want to end with another quote by Rumi. The wound is the place where the light enters you. In deep listening, we find that places we thought were broken or imperfect are the very places that healing begins. And in doing this, we make way for connection. Connection both with ourselves and with those we want to support. Thank you for listening to my story.